All right. So welcome everyone to our webinar, How to Use Digital Portfolios in High Schools for Workforce Readiness. As you'll see, Principal Peter Harris is also here today, and he's going to do the majority of the talking. I look forward to handing it over to him shortly. And then I'm just going to do some of the driving within Bulb as he walks us through some of the activities that his students and his educators are doing at their school. If you're just joining us, you're here at the right time. We're just getting started. I'm going to go ahead and close out our poll. And I'm going to share the results. So it looks like we have quite a few that already have a dedicated program. We've got one who's saying that they're in discussion about whether or not they need to create a program for their students. And then, and this is actually one that, as I was writing out this poll, I can think of my own students. So my children and the programs that they're involved in, they don't have a designated program, but they have times throughout the year where they'll allot for research, discussing the opportunities, providing that guidance from counselors and from educators. Today, we're going to really dive into what does these programs really look like, and specifically Ulster BOCES and the school PTECH, Hudson Valley Pathways Academy, and what they've implemented in their 6-year program. So I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you all for jumping on, and we're going to get started. So first, Principal Harris, I would just love for you to give us an introduction about who you are and what you do within education.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and see Andrew has popped on as well. Andrew, thank you for being a supporter of Ulster BOCES and for bringing us the Bulb digital portfolio. And Michelle, thanks for hosting today. So I'll be starting my 26th full-time year this fall as an educator. I was an English teacher, English language arts teacher for the better part of 15 years and been a building principal since. I began my administrative career in the school in which I taught English, very traditional component district here close to where I live, and then had the opportunity to be invited to lead a PTECH school, which stands for Pathways in Technology Early College High School. And PTECHs at their core are equity projects. They are intended to create an opportunity for young people who would not generally be perceived, judged, or feel themselves like they have access to career and technical training, advanced college opportunities, or even high school completion. And so those kids are given the opportunity by being identified through their homeschool guidance counselors in middle school to attend a PTECH. And during that time at PTECH, it's a 6-year program, 4-year high school replacement program, and 2 years of community college. The intention is to take these young people who are at risk of being in a position to have low pay, high turnover employment in their future, to provide them with middle skills for middle income, at least, so that they can work, live, and find joy right in our economic region. And that's how in New York, the PTECHs are set up in concert with the economic zones, the community colleges, or the state-run higher education institutions, an industry partner, and then a K-12 institution. So we're an educational service agency at Ulster BOCES. So we have sending districts that support our PTECH school and support us. And in so doing, the school was founded with Kingston City School District, who was the grant recipient initially to found this school. I worked with Ulster Community College and the Council of Industry of the Greater Hudson Valley to establish kind of a triad partnership to look into and understand what are workplace readiness skills. And that skills map goes on. It's daily work. We're always asking And I will even turn that to the participants at some point to ask, what skill sets do you think kids need in order to be employable into their future? And so we are constantly asking that question, and we're also looking to our industry partners to let us know what jobs are available in their industries in our area for our kids, and how can we help our young people be prepared to be professionals for those jobs. And so we have to then line that work up with the local community college partner, Ulster Community College, and our specific pathways that we've created at Hudson Valley Pathways Academy are manufacturing, network administration, and health informatics. And the idea is that those are the pathways that we have specific training for, because there are employment opportunities in those areas in our geographic and economic zone. So that's the work that we're up to at the 35,000 foot level in terms of what a PTECH is and what we're doing at Hudson Valley Pathways Academy.
That was excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Principal Harris. And I think actually having you share that now moves us really easily now into our questions. So what you've just shared with us, knowing that that's at the 30,000 view, why don't we dig a little bit deeper, and can you tell us about how Hudson Valley Pathways Academy, tell us about the school. How is it different from your traditional high schools?
So as I was speaking about that kind of that triangle of support, right? There's the K-12 partnership, there's the industry partnership, which again is the Council of Industry, which are a group of about 170 plus or minus manufacturers in our area. And then there's the community college component of it as well, the higher ed. We're different in that those folks were at the table at the founding of the program. And so they were able to really dive into the skills mapping and to think about the question of truly what skill sets do kids need in order to be employable in their future? And how can we develop a 6-year program where these kids come out with credentials that make them employable and give them the opportunity to be good humans who are ready to be in the workforce? And so what they essentially came up with 7 years ago in the founding of this school that we hold on to as our core learning threads. We have lots of names for how we call them. We call them our core learning threads. We call them our workplace learning standards. We also call them our global competency standards. They essentially boil down, they are leadership, creativity, multiple literacies, global citizenship, and self-direction. And there's a set of standards that associate with each of those skill sets. But that's what our industry partners in higher ed said they really want our kids, as they exit our program, to be good at. And we continually ask what types of skill sets. And at the onset, we believed, and at the onset of my translation of the program professionally as well 3 years ago, I believed that I would hear things like Excel spreadsheeting, blueprint reading. It's not what we hear. What we hear instead when it comes to those academic or specific content area skill sets is that employers want to teach those to their employees. They want good humans,
right,
who are, again, able to lead and be led and understand leadership, understand how to use creativity as a skill set, have multiple literacies in terms of their fluency of being able to read media and read content, or to be able to, as you and I did, Michelle, go from a Google call to a Zoom call to being able to use our iPhones to communicate with one another deftly. We want, and they wanted, kids who are globally competent, global citizens, and kids also that could be self-directed, that could understand how to bring a task to completion that they feel passionate about or that they've been assigned. That's a great, that's the founding, those are the founding principles that make us uniquely different. Also, our kids are targeting to receive an associate's degree at no cost to themselves or their family through our program. So they get their high school diploma, and as well as support towards their associate's degree so that they can have, again, industry type certification and qualification in advanced manufacturing, either health informatics or network administration.
That's fantastic, knowing that your students are coming out with more than the diploma. And thinking, you've been sharing about some of these partnerships and how from the beginning, how PTECH started with everybody at the table that needed to be there to really discuss how you work with these students. Can you tell us more about how do partnerships with your local businesses play a role within this program? I found that really interesting that you were able to have so many business leaders come and speak into this program, but then also participate alongside your students.
So there's a couple of different levels to it. There's the altruism, and there's the reality that many of them bring, that they just know that education can look and be different. That they know they have a feeling personally about their journey through learning, their parents who have an opinion, who have an idea about the learning journey of their kids, and then their employers or managers as well, who see the educational outcomes and want to be able to give voice to how we can shift, change, improve, or affirm what's going well. We have that also. And so they come to the table for that purpose, and they offer us the most frequent translation of their work is learning challenges. So they'll come in and we'll do a workplace learning challenge with one of our industry partners. I'll highlight one in particular. We have a corrugated cardboard manufacturer in our area, and he has given our kids workplace learning challenges that sound like design a box for a maple syrup company whose business I would like to bring to me. And if you can come up with some cool designs, maybe I can share them and you can help market for me. Another one was, here's a syrup flavoring company who is one of our customers, and we need boxing for them. And the criteria is these boxes that you build, that you design, young scholars, need to be dropped on 8 points of the box from 4 feet, so we know they will ship through United States Postal Service. Here is the corrugated cardboard. You guys build the design of the box, make sure that it's something that can be on shelves for retail and also shipped through United States Postal Service. And then our kids, they take those challenges. Those are just 2 examples, and we bring them through a project toolkit, where from launch, which is generally the challenge coming from our industry partner, all the way to the presentation of their work and learning and receiving critical feedback from that industry partner. And then there's reflection throughout that learning journey. And it's really powerful because they get to interact with those industry partners on the back and front end of that workplace learning challenge. And then what our staff does, they work to support skill-based learning and content mastery throughout, designing lessons and process to support the kids completing the project and completing the presentation. And it begins an interview each time that that all of our kids have an opportunity to respond to one of these challenges. And it was great. We had our first graduating class of 6th-year students this year who got associate's degrees. And so the gentleman who owns the company that I'm telling you about now, he was reflecting during the, just after the graduation, virtual graduation ceremony, about remembering the first time he interacted with these kids. And there was this sense of pride from our industry partner and partners to be a part of creating this very unique program. Project-based learning is not innovative. Workplace learning challenges may not be innovative, but the way in which we are implementing all of these things together makes us poised in a very unique way, specifically where we are in the Hudson Valley.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a great point. And actually hearing you talk about these projects and these challenges, knowing that there's a lot of work, research, I'm sure, a lot of collaboration happening with students and with these partners. it kind of leads us into this next question of why did Ulster BOCES choose to implement a digital portfolio program for PTECH?
Before I answer that one, I want to just talk about something that it was an aha for me when I got to PTECH. We reached out to one of our partners, Amatech Rotron, and asked them what they could provide to us, to our kids. And we decided with our freshmen, we call them chapter ones, we're doing what we can to retitle so that we can transition our young scholars in their learning journey. So the chapter ones, our 14-year-old freshmen, had an opportunity to work with Amatech Rotron, who really their business is government contract work, and they build and install fans loosely for planes and things that the government has as a resource. They provided us, rather than a challenge, an opportunity for lean manufacturing training, lean principle training. And just briefly, what that is the idea of the efficiency of workflow and organizing workflow correctly. And so our young scholars went through and do this now annually, a simulation where they virtualize building clocks. And so at first they have a complete random, here's the parts and here are the roles and responsibilities you need to get these clocks built. And they have no assigned responsibilities. They don't understand the workflow. By the fourth simulation, they've learned workflow. They've learned lean manufacturing principles and efficiency. And it fundamentally shifts, in my opinion, and in my experience, the way in which they organize their thinking, their response to our industry partners, their writing, and their creation of media specifically. It really changes the way they think. In a traditional way or space, we were taught to use advanced graphic organizers. We were taught to take notes in a very traditional style and fashion. They learn how to accomplish work and workflow in a tactile and tangible way, and it really shifts the experience.
Wow.
So sorry to jump the question.
So that makes total sense. Actually now, especially thinking of what you've just shared and just why Ulster BOCES chose to implement digital portfolios into the PTECH program, knowing that all of those pieces play a part within a portfolio itself.
Right, and so why did we choose it? So now I guess I'll talk to you about a different partnership that we have in answering this question. One of the charges or challenges or gifts that I'm giving being a principal at our PTECH at Hudson Valley Pathways Academy is the leveraging of partnerships, is to find quality resources, quality people, and utilize the resources and the power of the relationship to have good outcomes for kids. And so we do a lot of studying and a lot of work with High Tech High in San Diego. It's a network of schools in California. And they bring to us their project-based learning design kit. And essentially, we follow that design kit with our own flavor and our own nuances that goes from project launch all the way through reflection. But within it, it calls for curation, ideation. It calls for critique. And what we really believe, as evidenced by what I've been saying about our workplace learning challenges and getting feedback from those industry partners, we believe that the best feedback that you can get really comes from people who are completely capable of critiquing based upon their content mastery, their knowledge of what they need and what they're doing. And so we bring that flavor into curating for with digital portfolios. Mm-hmm. That's I won't say that's what we've accomplished, but that's our goal, is to be able to provide for all of our learners, adult learners, as well as our young scholars, an opportunity to articulate and curate the work that we're doing and to be able to reflect upon it and then have a public audience. Very ironically, when we talked earlier today, some of our pages weren't public that I wished for you to be able to look at. And so our intention, of course, we want to protect students' personally identifiable information, but at the same time, we want to create as much public audience that is real and capable of providing criticism or critique,
Mhm.
that's going to help us improve our product and our revisioning as we can get.
That makes total sense. And we will get into a couple of those. So we found ways. We'll definitely look at that. So how did digital portfolios impact the work of students and your educators? How are they received by local business partners?
So I'll speak about during the COVID closure, an outcome that happened that we weren't expecting, I guess. One of the pieces of the learning journey at PTECH is that with each chapter or each year, our young scholars are intended to report out during a chapter presentation. And what they're intended to do during their chapter presentation is to find specific points on the journey during that year, reflect upon those memories, those significant learning moments, name them, and then associate them with our learning threads, which again are leadership, creativity, multiple literacies, global citizenship, and self-direction. And to talk about how those significant learning moments help them have ahas, help them understand and move them to where they are now. And so in the past, we have utilized Google Docs and shared dynamic Google Docs. So Google Slides, PowerPoints, Prezis, those sorts of things. And what Bulb was able to do for us was really create, I want to say, an equitable platform. And also provide audience in a very different way. When you're working, whether it's in any shared dynamic document platform, it's not as easy, it's not as appealing to kind of share and to look at to make an audience excited about your project or your product. And I, for one, just getting really specific about how I feel personally when I'm around a colleague who wants to know what we're up to at PTECH, when I can pull up the Bulb portfolio app and I can show.
Oh, we can't see that, but that's okay.
I'll switch
I
that.
can share.
But I do want to show it.
Okay.
When I can very quickly show my phone at a professional meeting and show my portfolio, or I can toggle very quickly to the group and show that my students, all have icons that I can click on and dig into. There's a point of pride. It's different from going into dynamic documents. And as Bulb users know, there's the capacity to load media and all sorts of content and link and do all those kinds of cool things. So Bulb is another partner. I see it as another partnership that we can leverage to accentuate the success of our kids, to give them an opportunity to curate and to show their professionalism.
Right. So having you share that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do think what we were talking about earlier today, and knowing that we were able to get in and take a peek at some of those portfolios. Let me go ahead and whoops. Sorry,
so as you're looking through, Michelle, what I also want to say about those chapter presentations is that our young scholars were able to use their Bulb portfolios very specifically during their end of year chapter presentations, which is like a 5 to 7 minute discussion that they would usually give at a podium. This year, we did it on Zoom and they were recorded, and each one of our young scholars went into his or her Bulb portfolio and presented the artifacts from their personal curation. It gave a level of access to success for each one of the young scholars as we help them to revision and reflect and provided audience amongst the young scholars to one another. There was I feel like self-efficacy was built towards, I'm going to be good at my chapter presentation this year. It's not me taking one crack at it in front of a podium with a Google slide deck. It's my digital story, my digital portfolio that's a collection of work that I've been asked to maintain and create over a period of time. I feel good about what I'm going to say because I know I'm going to pull out artifacts. And that reminds me, earlier I made reference in our conversation. I watched the webinar with Principal Frazier from Miami-Dade. In that webinar that he gave, and that great talk that he gave, he spoke about pulling a manila folder out and looking at some schoolwork and kind of having that as an artifact. And so I'll just retell this story. On my birthday this year, from an aunt who lives in Florida, I received my 6th grade report card that was hanging on my grandmother's refrigerator, who passed a few years back. And on the back of my report card from 6th grade, it says, if you notice, he went up in everything since first quarter. That's my grandson. So it was great to receive this and have it be a tangible representation of their love for me and my relationship with them. But as I looked at the very traditional and standard report card, it didn't tell me anything about who I was as a learner. It has numbers on the front.
Yeah.
Bold portfolio gives us the ability to assess beyond that, to provide feedback beyond that, and to capture learning moments in a way that have student voice and are meaningful to the individual young scholars.
That's a great point. And thinking of that whole student and getting that full picture, especially thinking of these students that are now moving into the workforce and these employers who have the opportunity to look at the full breadth of a student, right? It's so much more than what their last semester grades were. And so earlier when Principal Harris held up his phone, what he was showing you was his group within Hudson Valley Pathways Academy. So as you can see in here, this is actually, there's 52 members in here. Students are in here posting their projects, the work that they're involved in. I know he has shared with me a story about a walk in their shoes project that they did. You can even see in here Desmos art projects. So it's a mix of activities. One in particular student that I know he wanted us to look at, so I'm gonna pull him up. I believe Brandon, there it is, Brandon Pendel.
Yep.
If you want to go ahead while I pull it up, give us a little background on this particular student. And I believe we're going to look at
Sure.
Haas Automation, or do you want to just give them a quick overview?
Sure, you can click on Haas Automation.
Okay.
The story that I want to tell about Brandon specifically is true of many of our young scholars at Hudson Valley Pathways Academy and our Career and Technical Center. This is a text reflection from Brandon. Actually, there's a PDF on the bottom that might be a clickable link, I'm not sure. During the COVID closure, we were able to leverage other partnerships. Since we're a member of the PTECH network and IBM supports that, IBM rolled out to the PTECH schools their digital badging that they used for their employees so that all PTECH students would have an opportunity. And so our young scholars had that opportunity to asynchronously go on and earn digital badges that indicate to industry, specifically also to IBM, an employability readiness. And so that was really great for the kids who were looking for something more, something different, a way to engage, to hone their skill sets. But Brandon, through his career and technical education in the manufacturing program, which is one of our pathways, he was able to take the invitation of his teacher to go onto the Haas Automation site and learn very specific CNC machine skills. He was able to learn virtually how to use these tools that we have in our lab, in our physical lab, that he hopefully will be able to return to someday in the not too distant future. But he was able to get those certifications and learn those lessons virtually, and felt really good about that.
That actually speaks to the question I was going to ask about how how did the learning keep happening when the shutdown occurred? So it sounds like even through all of this, you were able to find ways to keep students doing what they had signed up to do. He was able to actually get certification in CNC virtually, which to me is amazing. Having a father that was a CNC machinist, I know what that's about. And then to be able to see the work here, and again looking at at Brandon's work as a whole, Haas Automation is one piece of the whole picture of Brandon that we're getting here in his portfolio. He's talking about humanities and STEAM and other activities.
Yeah, so now that you backed out of that specific page, thank you for that prompt for recognizing so many things that you just spoke about. But first, let me say that one of the things that we did is we resourced many of our career and technical education teachers with GoPro cameras so that they could go into labs, which many of them have labs at their own home, right? Because they're passionate about what it is they teach. Right. And they were able to deliver, record videos or live stream content specific to what they wanted our young scholars to be able to learn, know, and do. So that was one thing that was really a low lift. But how did learning continue and what did we do? Well, first and foremost, we're a one-to-one school. So our kids, our young scholars are very accustomed to working across Google platform, for just one example, as well as Bulb. We have quite a few portals that we access, but they're accustomed to being in the physical space with one another, laptops open and working. So the translation to Zoom was they had to learn Zoom, but they were already pretty deft at Google Chat. It was not uncommon when a student was unable, a young scholar was unable to be physically present prior to March 13th, that a laptop might be open, kind of panning the classroom so that whoever was home but wanting to be engaged in the learning might be listening in or working on a shared document. So we had that about our kind of the nuance of our program already. But what we did do specifically is we held virtual sessions Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that were synchronous. We had 2 learning blocks per day, plus a community meeting, and asynchronous time that was really intended for touch base, advisory, if you will, just making sure that we were tending to relationships in that very personal kind of one-to-one or small group. We always started the day with a community meeting, so we knew that relationships were intact, that people were present. It's a very intentional thing to log on to a Zoom. You know what you're getting yourself into when you log into to a webinar, to a Zoom call. And what we did early on was we taught the expectations for setting digital background, how to set it, how to demonstrate response, how to interact on a virtual platform, all those types of things. So early on, that's what we focused on. For about the first 2 weeks, we looked at skill sets necessary to succeed or at least survive in a virtual setting. Yeah. And that was really great. We set a good context with it. That was our content. That's how we got started. And then we were able to move on to doing work based upon the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We had already kind of started that in February with all of our young scholars, but it really pivoted when they were then home and kind of shut away from being outdoors, how they really felt about sustainability as a theme. So that was kind of our humanities focus with our PTECH. And then our STEM and employability focus shifted virtually to contacting our industry partners and saying, okay, we are okay. Are you okay? How can we work together? And so they were very honest and said, well, we're not sure, but we have the same problem you have. We have this leadership management program that we offer to all of our partners so that we can help train up their leaders to be. we're not sure how we're going to deliver it. So we said, maybe our young scholars can talk to you about how to deliver that. And so we dug in over a 2-week period, and our kids researched digital platforms to the best of their ability, divvied that up, and did presentations on a Zoom call. There were about 60 people on the Zoom call to the industry partners, got feedback on what they were suggesting and recommending. It was funny, it was on point. It gave all the information ranging from Microsoft Teams to Netflix party to FaceTime use and Zoom, and what capacity different things had. And the adults, the industry partners, were totally impressed. I was humbled for sure at the work that the kids were able to do. One of the greatest things about this virtual time also was that they were able to recognize that their voice was one in the front row. Everybody's in the front row on a Zoom call, assuming it's not a webinar where there's just a couple of panelists. But the way that we conducted it, everybody had microphone on, camera on, and
it was classroom.
And we learned protocols on how to interact with one another. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So actually, as you were saying this too, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And I know we had talked about Matthew Fagan, your educator, as an example of, and just so you all know, this particular educator is public, and we'll make sure to share out his along with a couple other examples of educators there. But thinking of, as you shared, during the spring when things really began to shut down, and just how you communicated out, how the teachers connected regularly. The learning continued regardless of the situation they were in. I'm actually hearing you share that story. I just recently had done some writing around student engagement and how do you keep that going? And that's such a beautiful example of clear student engagement, doing the work, going above and beyond. And if you don't mind, I would love to know here within Matthew Fagan's portfolio, anything specific that you'd want to call out as examples of how now your educators have adopted Bulb and digital portfolios for their students.
So I'm not able to really dig in by clicking, but I'm looking at the about me. Okay, you're going.
Yep.
That's great.
We could take a peek.
So, that's great. So we have another partnership that I can tell you about that we leverage, which is fabulous. We're members of the International School Study Networks program. And through that relationship, we look at all of our work through this inquiry arc, this inquiry cycle that is called the Global Competency Wheel. And that's what you have on the screen in front of you. And Matt is a certified social studies teacher, but he really is a very holistic teacher. He is a guide on the side. He's a mentor. He can lecture if needed, but that's not his chosen way to do things. He creates access ramps for kids to engage with content. He's really strong with media. Also, he has that capacity as a teacher. So when he looks through this global competency wheel and works with our young scholars to investigate the world, recognize perspectives of others, so developing empathy and really thinking about that lens that somebody else might have, and then helping them to communicate out their ideas, and then to be able to take those ideas and make them actionable so that someone's condition can improve or something can come out of the work and the investigation. That's what you'll see when you look through Matt's public portfolio, is an articulation of all of those things. And so there are 3 specific ones that I'll try to be brief. Walk in Their Shoes is a project that we did that the launch was our young scholars went to see a play called The Legacy Project. It's a story of an American in 1938-39 in Berlin dealing with cowardice and courage and deciding how he's going to help folks in Berlin at that time. And so they saw a professional Reader's Theater production of it at a local theater. We also had 5 different full-length pieces of literature that our young scholars read that dealt with displacement of people as a theme. Then the theater group that we worked with also was able to bring in refugee youth who were being temporarily housed in our city of Kingston, which is in our county. And those kids came in and they shared with us, the refugee youth, their stories of border crossing in their native language, and then we translated. Once we had done so much more than just those wonderful things, which were significant signature learning moments for our kids, with our kids, it was up to me to remove some barriers. They wanted to do an art project, Mr. Masson, Mr. Fagan, the entire staff, Ms. Ladarzik, and so they needed canvas to do this art project. So we needed to find a way to get canvas that kids could create art on that matched the theme. And so the theme was going to be a walk in their shoes. This was their way to curate. This was their way to demonstrate their learning and to do it in a very public way. So we purchased these white sneakers as the canvas. Each young scholar got a pair of sneakers, and they began to create their art. They iterated on paper, and then eventually they got their sneakers and they did their art on their sneakers. And as you can see, this is one of our young scholars above in the banner. Go to the banner. She is actually at the event where we donated all of the artwork. The student artwork got donated to the theater group so that they can continue to do work in the community with the refugee youth. Wow. These are the sneakers laid out. Yep.
There it is. Yeah.
There you go. And all the sneakers went for silent auction. The kids produced the event. Didn't handle into money, that sort of stuff. We're always very careful that we stay in our lane. And actually these boxes, you can see our industry partner I spoke of earlier, Viking Industries, they created these boxes. You can see reflection documents and you can see labels. There was a great deal of planning, organizing, and pulling off a public event, but it was certainly prideful. There's probably a video for when if you take the opportunity after our webinar today to look in, you'll probably be able to see the walk in their shoes, or you can reach out to me and I can send you the video. Okay. Very similar process, Water in Our World. That was our, again, journey through the inquiry arc, the global competency wheel, and investigating access to clean water and thinking about how we could get kids to come up with, the young scholars come up with their own essential question about access to clean water. And so it ranged from how can we, create access for recreation, active and passive, right here on the Hudson River, to should water be a commodity, Nestle, a major vendor of water, when they bottle, when they bottle from processing to the shelves in a retail space, and Kevin is right here. He's one of the kids that had a great essential question. Is it fair that this water is a commodity that's bought and sold, and goes past schools, specifically in Michigan, who don't have access to clean water, drinking water, might have to buy a bottle for $1. So those are the kinds of things they wrestled with. Yeah. Kevin, specifically, that you zoomed in on, he had a great moment of a great aha moment and great learning moment when he thought he was going to win the Nobel Prize, when he came up with this calculation that it would take about 380,000 gallons of petrol to desalinize enough potable water for New York City for a day. And he thought, wow, I figured it out. And then he quickly realized, no, that's exactly the problem that I'm trying to solve. Yeah. So empowering kids to investigate what they wish to investigate within the context of a theme, and to bring them through the learning process that way, that's what Matt Fagan is all about. And that's what you curated here. I could go on, but
that's that was great. Thank you so much for walking us through that. And just so you guys know, again, Matthew's portfolio is public. Before we move on, and we'll make sure you guys have access, and we'll also do a little research, because if there is a video out there, as you mentioned, about the about the shoe project, I think that would be great to include in our resources. But before we stop looking here into Bulb and move on to our last question, I just wanted to show you also, Principal Harris happens to also have a portfolio that he has made public. And I think it's so valuable here to be able to one, see the principal of the school actually with his own portfolio, showcasing your students right there in the banner. If you just want to give us just a little bit of discussion as to what you do within your portfolio. Is this something that you share with the students? Is this something that they're able to access and to also see for themselves?
So I'm a part of the group. I have received feedback from them as they're doing feedback cycles within the group, where, you know, the lead learners, the teachers, will be saying, you know, go into the Bulb portfolio and look specifically at entries from, and provide feedback, warm, cold, we call them glows and grows, provide glows and grows to one another, and do that for, you know, they'll name it on the specific day, one other person, two other people, whatever it is. And I have gotten feedback on my portfolio. So I think it needs a lot of work to flesh out, to have it be the portfolio that I would really wish it to be, to demonstrate to you. But I think the most important point is that they can see that I have one, that they're a part of it. They can see a few things that I am considering to be of value about who I would want to be seen as in a public way as a learner, from conference presentations to essential partnerships and IBM collaboration and our first robotics team and the Star Wars costume design challenge. You know, that's about creativity. And every one of these things, though, is about, again, leveraging partnerships to bring our community into the school building to talk to us about what they think our learning journey could look like by working with them. So that's the theme that I would kind of want them to see.
That's fantastic. Thank you for walking us through that, and we'll make sure that we also include Principal Harris in the resource list. So I'm going to move us into our last question. We're at 45, and before we open up Q&A, and by the way, please don't hesitate to start typing in your questions as you have them. We will definitely get to them next. I would just love to hear from you, Principal Harris. What are 2 pieces of advice that you'd give educational professionals who are considering implementing digital portfolios into this school year plan? And I'm thinking specifically of the what I'm going to call your PTECH Bible, kind of what you shared with me earlier, knowing that, you know, this school year is going to look differently.
Well, I guess I would say audience and curation are the 2 things that I would talk about. You know, presenting to an audience that's qualified to give feedback is something that is really important to me and to our program and to all the programs at Ulster BOCES. It's a goal, it's aspirational in some of our programs, but at PTECH, it's what we do. There's always an audience who we mean to present to. What Bulb has gotten us really rapidly, and I think we started Bulb maybe in January of 2019. So over the 2 school years that we've been working with Bulb, it's really gotten us to think about how we're creating content and media as we work. How are we capturing moments? So are we making sure to have pictures and videos that can go into the Bulb portfolio that we can use to chart our learning journey, to chart our growth, to reflect upon? There were many times when I first arrived and translated myself into the PTECH way of knowing, where we'd have powerful and wonderful presentations from guest speakers, guest lecturers, workplace learning challenges. We weren't capturing content. And so thinking about presentation to audience is something that is critical and crucial, I think, specifically if you're going to use digital portfolios and during this COVID closure or during our new way of knowing. Being able to create content for an audience is one of the highest levels that you can achieve with and for kids on their learning journey. And then curation of beautiful work, right? Thinking about protocoling around what beautiful work is, how to achieve it, working towards revising it, reflecting upon it, always bringing in, again, that audience, that outside voice who can give feedback and content-specific feedback as well. You want to look to experts who are truly capable of giving you critical commentary based upon who they are professionally or personally. So you want to be mindful of who you're inviting to give the feedback. And I would say you almost want to have the people who are most able to be critical for growth.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And so with that, I would love to just open up our Q&A time with Principal Harris. Let's go. I like to press share for some reason. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, if there's any questions that you'd like to ask, I just posted in the chat both Principal Harris and Matthew Fagan's portfolios. I do know we have a couple others that we'll be sharing out with our resources so that you can take a peek and see more about the projects that they're involved in and ways that you can connect with them as well.
So Michelle, as
Yes.
we're waiting to see if there's a question, I feel like you were implying a question to me earlier about this document that I held up earlier, which is
I'm gonna stop sharing so that way everybody can see it nice and clearly. Then there you go.
So this is the beginning of Ulster Vosie's reopening and reimagining a brighter future plan based upon who we really believe we need to be the best we can be into the future. Not despite or in spite of or because of, but we are in this moment where we must reinvent ourselves and have vision for that. In New York State, our guidance document from Department of Health and from State Ed came out on July 13th. And so many districts began in earnest working on July 13th. I will tell you very proudly that our superintendent began that work with us well before even March 13th. So we have always been targeting the question of what can schools be? And that's our generative question and work on a pretty consistent basis. So how we're organizing this document is that we're looking through a couple of lenses. We're looking at teaching and learning, community and communication, health and safety, and well-being and support, so that we can have a document that goes to the state education department that checks the box of we have our plan, but we also are making it forward-facing so that all teachers, all learners, all families, everybody in the community can look into this document and understand how it is we're going to operate, whether it be fully virtual, face-to-face, or some sort of a hybridized model, keeping in mind that really they all need to be operational every day, because we do believe that we're hearing numbers as high as 40% of folks who will opt out of returning to the physical face-to-face school, but we'll be expecting to still have complete and full access to our educational program. So we have to be planning for that. Specifically in the teaching and learning category, we're looking at the learning journey so that we can help to articulate how it is we're going to develop unique self and capacity for all of our learners. When I say all, I mean adults in the organization and the young scholars. We're creating an instructional framework, which includes both. It includes all of the portals and platforms that we'll leverage in order to make sure that we have quality opportunities for all to articulate and express their learning. It focuses on social and emotional learning, so community structures, routines, and practices, articulating out how we're going to hold community meetings, how we're going to set circles. There's a lot of talk. Restorative practice has become almost a buzzword in jargon today. So but the truth about restorative practices is you must have community connection and solid relationships. Otherwise, there's nothing to restore back to.
Yeah.
So setting the circle is really important. That's what we're calling it in terms of the social and emotional learning, and always being mindful to tend to relationships. Expectations and supports. So what are our behavioral, what are our protocols, all those kinds of things, and then supports that we'll use. There's a lot of work that we need to think about as educators in this virtual space. How do we manage each other's energy and time and behaviors? I'll just give you a quick example. We're doing this great East Coast, West Coast digital magazine as a bridge program this summer with our kids and some kids at High Tech High. And one of my teachers texted me the other day and it's actually happening right now, it's from 12 to 2 every day. He texted me, he's like, student X is really energetic today. I might have to remove him from the meeting. And I said, yeah, or utilize a breakout room, state the expectation, and then go back into the main session. But those aren't things we've thought through, I don't believe yet, in the average space. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of what are the supports rather than talking about discipline and management. What are the expectations? What are the supports?
Right.
And then the PD part of it too, we're looking into. So adults as learners, how are we tending not just to our pedagogy, but to to our philosophy around adult learning as well.
It's fantastic. Thank you for laying that out. And actually, while you were doing that, we do have our first question from Anonymous. So, Principal Harris, how do you recommend fostering the same excitement about bulb in your teachers that you yourself clearly have?
So, I think that the answer that I gave to Michelle earlier about audience and curation and giving everyone access, equitable access to the platform, and protocoling around what is beautiful work, what is truly quality work, and what kind of feedback we can give one another, dependent again upon audience. And there's this great video that I've had the opportunity to watch many times that I would ask you to look at when I refer to beautiful work. Ron Berger's Austin's Butterfly. And when you think about asking a young child to draw a butterfly, just draw a butterfly. What will you get based upon your explicit instructions? But then as you think about what critique, what feedback, what other information you could provide, when you could ask, please draw a monarch butterfly. You start to, when you get explicit with your language. Right. And so those are the ways in which, just to answer briefly, I would start to give teachers an idea as to how and why. I would also probably talk about the new blooms, and that creation is really at the top. Being able to be creative and skillful with creativity, and be able to create content and media. And then I would also just say, and we haven't talked about this during this webinar, although I think it was the intention, our industry partners need to be the audience for all of these portfolios, because they're the core support for this program, and they are invested in our kids becoming good people and employable. They're invested in both pieces, and they're very discreet, right? We need to make it a unified path, but being a good person, being an employable person, those are two really important things to be. But our target must be that these kids are employable when they leave, so that they can find joy, find passion in their work, and sustain their relationships and whatever family structure that they define for themselves into their future. So it's best if we can say, not here's your report card that you can show to someone that they're not going to be able to translate, but instead, here is a representation, an embodiment of digital, embodiment of your work that can show your skill sets and what you've learned, and can trigger questions and responses from somebody who potentially is going to give you an opportunity to shine and thrive. Those are the ways I would talk to I do talk to my staff.
Mhm. Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Principal Harris. And actually, we're right almost at the top of the hour, and I'm going to give you a little bit of praise here from Carla, and from me as well, because when you shared that example of just using that breakout room, what a beautiful example of speaking more to the expectations. And she even called out specifically how this can really help with special education and those ELL students that that just might need a little bit of extra. And that simple act makes such a huge difference for those students and allows them to still collaborate, connect, and to engage without feeling like I'm being disciplined or it's an ultimatum. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's important in those moments that we always remember that we've designed the experience perfectly for its outcome. So we just need to think about, okay, what's the next stage or step in design, so that when we have a behavior that's off protocol or out of off script from what we were expecting, we just think about what supports we can put in place and how we can move the energy productively.
Completely agree. That's so true. And so with that, I want to keep us to time. Thank you so much, Principal Harris, for your time today. Thank you all for your flexibility. I know that there were many that registered that probably weren't able to make this second half. So the full recording, it will be sent with all of the additional resources that you saw today, along with some additional. So that will be coming to you. And just so appreciative of your time. And honestly, I want to know how I can go back to school because your school sounds amazing. The Academy sounds like something any students would thoroughly enjoy. Next Thursday, we do have the start of a 3-part webinar series with Carl Hooker, and we'll be sending that out. The first one's on assessment, so we hope you'll be able to join us for those. We'll make sure times are not a confusion problem, and we're just grateful that you all were able to join us today. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your week.